There's something else that we have talked about this morning as well, and it has to do with large cap technology. We've been talking over the past couple of weeks about the increased drumbeat of talk about regulation of large cap tech in Europe as well as in the United States. And today, for the first time, the Justice Department and the administration have reportedly endorsed the antitrust legislation that's before Congress and that Congress has debated that would prevent large cap tech from sort of marketing its own products, for example, to users. Dan Howley is here to explain more about what's in the legislation, the significance as well of this sort of endorsement. Morning, Dan.
Morning, Julie. That's right. This is called the American Innovation and Choice Online Act. It's part of a twofer of new pieces of legislation that the Senate is talking about. This is being sponsored by Senators Amy Klobuchar and Chuck Grassley. And basically, it would apply to companies with at least 50 million monthly active users or 100,000 monthly business users. And essentially, what it would do is prevent companies from self-preferencing themselves. So, for instance, think when you look at Google, if you happen to Google something and Google Maps shows up first, or Google's restaurant search comes up first rather than something like a Yelp. That's the kind of self-preferencing we're talking about. Amazon basics items coming up before a competitor's item. And we know that there's been a lot of talk of whether or not Amazon has used data about competitors' items that are sold on its marketplace to get ahead of them as far as designing new products. So this would prevent actions like that. Now, it isn't the same as another piece of legislation. That's the Open App Markets Act. And that is also before the Senate, and that, or not before the full Senate, but is being run through the Senate right now. And what that would do is prevent app stores. Think about Google's App Store, Apple's App Store, things along those lines, from forcing companies to use their own payment systems, to use those app stores' proprietary payment systems, and then hand over some kind of payment to those companies, that 30% fee that Apple and Google collect, or 15% fee, depending on what they're working with as far as their guidelines. So there's two different pieces. The first one, though, that the Justice Department seems to be endorsing here is the American Innovation and Choice Online Act. And that could have serious repercussions for a number of these companies. And, I know I said that it would the App Markets Act would impact Google and Apple specifically, but both those companies would also be hit by this Choice Online Act as well. So we have two pieces of legislation here that are moving their way through. And as you said, this is not the only legislation that these companies have to worry about. The EU is going to be putting into effect their own piece of legislation that will go after both of these areas that these two acts are going after. We have the UK doing their own thing, China, South Korea. Apple's getting fined $55 million in the Netherlands right now. So there's a lot going on here at the moment.
Dan, what are the chances this legislation in the U.S. actually gets through?
Yeah, it's interesting because there is some pushback from some senators. Some Republicans say that they don't want to see the government step in and have control over what these companies are able to do. Some Democrats, especially Democrats in California, where a lot of these companies are obviously based, are wary of it as well. You can imagine they're probably getting a lot of pushback at home. But, I think that the appetite is there for antitrust regulation. And look, it's Klobuchar and Grassley. They're both on opposite sides of the aisle, and they've managed to come together. They seem to work together well on this antitrust legislation. And whenever there's these hearings, as much of a sideshow as they can be, at least the public ones, they do seem to both come together, both sides of the aisle, and say we need some kind of legislation to restrict the actions that these companies are able to take. So I do think we will eventually see something. I just don't think it's going to happen, in the immediate future, that's just kind of the way Washington works.
Indeed it is, Dan Howley. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.